I don't need to go back and trash everything that was or happened. I were to say, oh, I'm really sorry I did all that. Would I be in this great place? No.
No.
How Robyn and Kody weaponized a pandemic to destroy the Brown family. Robyn Brown's tangled history with Mykelti is one of the darkest, most revealing chapters in the Sister Wives saga, and it begins with a simple truth. What looked like affection was always strategy. In the early years of Kody and Robyn's relationship, Robyn positioned herself as the benevolent stepmother, the savior figure, the one who could connect with Christine's children where Christine supposedly failed. Mykelti became her chosen proof. Robyn held her up as evidence that she was not the intruder, not the usurper, but rather the compassionate mother who could mend broken bonds. Mykelti, eager to bridge fractured relationships and desperate for her father's approval, leaned in. She moved with Robyn when the courtship began. She spoke highly of her. She believed that being neutral, being loyal, might finally secure her a place in Kody's heart. But what she did not see, what none of them saw at first, was the cold calculation at the center of Robyn's affection. This was never about love. This was about optics, manipulation, and control. The turning point came at Garrison's funeral, a moment heavy with grief, raw emotion, and shattered family ties. Mykelti made the fatal mistake of pointing out Robyn's inappropriate behavior, of daring to voice what others whispered behind closed doors. That act, honest but inconvenient, sealed her fate. In the world of Robyn and Kody, dissent is betrayal, and betrayal is punished swiftly and without mercy. Overnight, Mykelti went from trusted ally to pariah. She was no longer the stepdaughter who could be paraded as proof of Robyn's kindness. She was a liability. Robyn and Kody severed ties with chilling efficiency. Suddenly, Mykelti's tears were unwelcome, her voice silenced, her very presence rewritten as dangerous. This was Robyn's pattern, a textbook display of covert narcissism, hypersensitive to criticism, incapable of forgiveness, always rewriting the story to maintain her spotless image. Mykelti, meanwhile, was left stranded. Her loyalty had been weaponized, her trust exploited, her love discarded the moment it ceased to serve Robyn's narrative. And this is where the story widens into something larger than just one relationship. Because Robyn did not merely use Mykelti for personal validation, she used her as ammunition in a broader war. By pulling Christine's daughter into her camp, Robyn could hold up a trophy. Even Christine's own child prefers me. It was a dagger aimed squarely at Christine's heart, a manipulation designed to fracture the bonds of motherhood and rewrite the script of who truly held influence in the family. But like all strategies born of deceit, it carried an expiration date. The moment Mykelti ceased to play along, the mask slipped. This pattern of use and discard reveals the deeper tragedy of Robyn's so-called victory in the Sister Wives War. Yes, she won Kody. Yes, she dismantled the collective power of Christine, Janelle, and Mary. Yes, she cornered his time, his money, his attention. But what she is left with is not triumph. It is isolation. The woman who fought to be the favorite wife now finds herself the only wife, tethered to a man who has grown angrier, harsher, and more financially unstable with each passing year. Kody, stripped of his harem, has nothing left to balance him out, no other relationships to diffuse his temper or mask his dysfunction. Robyn won the prize, but the prize is poisoned: a furious husband, a fractured reputation, and a dwindling income stream that can no longer support the extravagant lifestyle she once enjoyed. Financial collapse shadows every corner of their marriage. With Christine, Janelle, and Mary gone, so too went the steady flow of paychecks that had long sustained the Brown empire. Robyn and Kody are now saddled with private mortgages, child support obligations, and the harsh reality that TLC money is not infinite. The gilded cage they built has become a trap. And yet, Robyn's instinct is not to face the truth, but to double down on control. She keeps her children tethered to her, isolated from wider influences, instilling in them the same fear and dependence that once bound her. Freedom is treated as a threat. Independence is cast as betrayal. It is the same playbook she once used with Mykelti, now rewritten for her own offspring. The irony is staggering. Robin once framed herself as the healer, the protector, the mother who would save the family from dysfunction. But by aligning herself so completely with Cody's ego, by indulging his worst impulses, and never demanding accountability, she has unleashed his full monstrosity upon herself. Without rivals to outshine, without other wives to carry the burden, she is left alone with Cody in his rawest, least tolerable form. The very thing she fought to monopolize has become her prison, and the public sees it. Viewers who once might have sympathized now watch with open scorn. They see the hypocrisy of Robin's selective illnesses, her weaponized tears, her contradictions during the pandemic when rules bent effortlessly for her convenience. They see the way she rewrites history, painting herself as the victim while ignoring the wreckage left in her wake. They see the way she clings to loyalty as currency, rewarding those who comply and destroying those who question. Mykelti's story is only the most visible example of this cycle, but it is emblematic of everything Robin represents. Exploitation disguised as love, control disguised as protection, manipulation disguised as loyalty. The timeline is clear. In the beginning, Robin rose by exploiting the cracks in Christine's family bond. She courted Mykelti, paraded her loyalty, weaponized her against Christine. Then came the funeral, the descent, the rupture. In that moment, the facade collapsed, and the discarded child was left with nothing but the realization that she had been a prop in someone else's theater. Robin moved on, rewriting the story yet again, casting herself as misunderstood, as persecuted, as the eternal victim of a family that never accepted her. But the cracks are too deep to hide, the pattern too obvious to ignore. And so the narrative builds toward its inevitable climax. Robin's war may have ended in victory, but it is a hollow victory. The woman who destroyed a family to secure her place now finds herself caged within the ruins, tethered to a man whose anger corrodes everything it touches, burdened by a financial empire that is collapsing beneath its own weight, haunted by the truth that loyalty bought through manipulation never lasts. Mykelti's story is not an isolated betrayal. It is the blueprint. And the question that lingers, the one viewers cannot shake, is this. If Robin could so easily discard the daughter she once called her own, what does that say about the foundation of everything she has built? The story does not end here. It cannot, because the fractures are still widening, the fallout still unfolding. Robin clings tighter, Cody grows angrier, the children inch closer to the breaking point, and somewhere in the midst of it all, the echoes of Mykelti's honesty remain, the voice of the discarded daughter who dared to speak the truth, a voice that, no matter how hard Robin tries to erase, will not be silenced. Janelle Brown's mysterious 5-year disappearance remains one of the most underexplored yet most telling episodes in the history of Sister Wives. It is a story that reveals not only the cracks in her relationship with Cody, but also the machinery of the entire Brown family, a machinery fueled by favoritism, manipulation, and the cold economics of survival. In the official family timeline, Janelle appears to be the steady, practical wife, the one who kept her head down, built careers, and ensured mortgages were paid. But between 2001 and 2006, she vanished. She left Cody, left the collective, and retreated to Wyoming, where she lived with her mother. The public explanation has always been murky, drowned in half-truths and omissions. Yet the more closely you trace the events, the clearer the truth becomes. Janelle's absence wasn't an accident, it was a statement. And her return wasn't about love, but about pressure, financial entanglement, and the inevitable pull of family expectation. The timeline begins with the birth of Gabrielle in 2001. Shortly afterward, Janelle walked away. She wasn't just taking a break. She was cutting Cody off, detaching from the wider family, choosing distance over dysfunction. In those years, she lived in Wyoming with her mother, raising her children in what was, for all intents and purposes, a monogamous bubble. Cody would drive out to see her, spending long stretches away from Christine and Mary, who were left to juggle multiple households, dozens of children, and the heavy emotional load of plural marriage. For Janelle, it was one of the best times of her marriage. She admitted as much in later years. Cody treated her like a devoted nuclear husband, showering attention on her children, giving her what Christine and Mary never received. This was the Robin treatment years before Robin even appeared on the scene. It wasn't equality, it was favoritism disguised as balance, and Janelle benefited. But the illusion didn't last. Around 2006, Janelle re-emerged in Utah, purchasing the Lehigh house on her own mortgage. Her financial stability, her career-oriented discipline, was what gave the family its foundation at that time. Cody, ever eager to secure his empire, tied himself once again to her financial lifeline. And with her mother's influence, her children, and the weight of expectations pressing in, Janelle returned, not with fire, not with passion, but with resignation. She chose the path of least resistance: come back, maintain the appearance of unity, and trade emotional detachment for practical survival. This history explains why Janelle always appeared different on the couch interviews: detached, quiet, almost an outsider sitting in her own family. When Christine wept for romance, when Mary clung desperately to status, Janelle shrugged. She repeated her mantra: "He's great with my kids," not so much as a statement of fact, but as a shield. It was easier to convince herself than to challenge Cody's obvious favoritism. She did not crave intimacy, she did not demand fairness, she simply wanted the bills paid and the children raised. It was pragmatism that kept her tethered, not love. And yet, this absence and return are not just side notes in the family history. They are the blueprint of how Cody operated and how Janelle chose to cope. Her 5-year exile shows us what happens when a wife refuses to play the emotional game. Cody indulges, plays the doting father, but only as long as the arrangement feeds his ego. Once Janelle was back in Utah, once the cameras began to roll, the dynamic froze in place. She became the stoic wife who asked for nothing, demanded nothing, and in exchange was left alone. It was survival, but it was also self-erasure. This pragmatic coldness must be understood against the backdrop of the Brown family's early living conditions that Christine herself later described as abusive. In those early years, space was scarce, money was tight, and families lived crammed into small houses. Children slept with their mothers, while marital intimacy happened behind thin walls or in adjoining rooms. Christine would later claim that this setup crossed into the territory of sexual abuse, because children overheard, because the line between privacy and exposure blurred too often. The defense has always been the same: poverty, necessity, logistics. And there is truth to that. Communal sleeping has existed for centuries, but necessity only explains so much. When the Browns finally had money, when houses became larger, when there was ample space, Cody chose to continue certain practices. He allowed Robin's children to share his bed for years, long after the excuse of overcrowding had expired. That is where the narrative darkens. What might once have been explained as survival became choice. Choices that blurred boundaries, that made even the older children uneasy. Maddie revealed that Savannah slept with Janelle on non-Cody nights to avoid exposure, a small detail that reveals how children adapted to protect themselves. Robin's children, however, were granted a different arrangement, one that seemed less about necessity and more about indulgence, about favoritism. Here again, the cycle repeats. The same pattern that played out with Janelle's 5-year absence and return. The same favoritism disguised as fairness. the same manipulation repackaged as love. The trauma of those years lingers in ways the Browns rarely acknowledge. Children who overheard, children who had no safe boundaries, children who learned that privacy was a luxury they were never afforded. Christine may have used the word abused to capture that trauma, and while the reality may not fit the strict legal definition, the emotional impact is undeniable. Children raised in houses where intimacy is audible, unavoidable, are children forced into awareness long before they are ready, and the choice to continue those arrangements when resources were available transforms a story of survival into one of dysfunction by design. Janelle's exile and return, Christine's claim of abuse, Cody's choices about who shared his bed and who didn't, these are not isolated events. They are threads in the same tapestry, a tapestry woven out of favoritism, manipulation, and the cold calculation of Cody's ego. Janelle disappeared because she wanted space, because she wanted peace, because she wanted a version of Cody that acted like a real husband. She returned because pressure, money, and children left her no other option. Her children grew close to Cody, not because he was an equal father, but because, for a brief time, he played the part of the devoted dad in their monogamous bubble. And when she returned, she carried that detachment with her forever. Christine's children, meanwhile, grew up hearing too much, seeing too much, absorbing trauma that was brushed aside as logistics. And Robin's children were folded into a different narrative entirely, one where boundaries dissolved not from poverty, but from preference. It is all part of the same cycle, one where control, favoritism, and manipulation masquerade as love, one where wives and children are drawn in and discarded according to Cody's shifting attention. The missing years of Janelle's life, the crowded bedrooms of Leahy, the blurred lines of intimacy and privacy, all of it points to a single conclusion. The Brown family's dysfunction was not born during COVID, nor did it begin with Robin. It was always there, in the cracks of marriages that never truly worked, in the compromises that blurred into abuses, in the silences that allowed manipulation to thrive. And as the story continues to unfold, those silences will only grow louder, because the truth has never been the family's currency. Their real currency has always been loyalty, control, and the convenient fiction of unity. The fractures are not accidents. They are the natural consequence of a system built on favoritism and denial. The story is far from over, but already the patterns are undeniable. Janelle's detachment, Christine's accusations, Robin's indulgence, Cody's favoritism, they are not different stories, but the same one told through different players. And as the cracks widen, as more children speak, as more truths slip through the polished narrative, the facade of family unity will crumble further. Because in the end, what keeps audiences watching isn't the dream of plural harmony, it's the unraveling of a family that never really was what it claimed to be. When the pandemic arrived, the Brown family presented it to the cameras as the great dividing line, the moment when health rules and household policies supposedly tore them apart. But the truth is far darker and far more manipulative than the tidy storyline TLC served up. COVID was not the cause of the Brown family's fracture, it was the excuse. The virus became the perfect weapon in Robin's arsenal and the perfect shield for Cody's ego. Together they wielded it with surgical precision, Robin cloaking herself in fear and fragile health, Cody transforming concern into authoritarian control. What the public saw was a family divided over safety. What really happened was a carefully orchestrated campaign of isolation, gaslighting, and selective enforcement designed to consolidate power around Cody and Robin and crush dissent from the other wives. The pattern was obvious from the beginning. While Christine and Janelle pleaded for common sense and fairness, Robin imposed draconian rules that went far beyond medical necessity. Children were told they could not see each other, extended family was cut off, holidays were shattered, but there were loopholes, always for Robin's convenience. The nanny could come and go every single day, entering the supposedly sealed-off household without scrutiny. Meanwhile, the children of the other wives were forbidden even the simplest contact. The hypocrisy was galling. Even as Robin and Cody preached fear and safety, they were spotted at restaurants without masks, shopping in public, moving freely when it suited them. Their supposed terror of COVID vanished whenever indulgence was on the line, only to be resurrected when it came time to control Christine and Janelle. Robin's pattern of using illness as an escape hatch was nothing new. For years, she had leaned on vague ailments to avoid parenting duties, to justify outsourcing care, to explain why she could not fully participate. The pandemic supercharged that strategy. Wrapped in hypochondria, she could wall herself off from responsibility while turning Cody into her enforcer. He, ever eager to flex authority, gladly played the role. Rules became commandments, and breaking them, even questioning them, was treated as rebellion. Suddenly, the family dynamic was not about health at all. It was about loyalty. Who would bow to Robin's fear and Cody's control, and who would dare to resist? Christine and Janelle resisted. They saw through the contradictions, they recognized the manipulation, and they refused to kneel. For Cody, this wasn't just disagreement, it was betrayal. His fragile ego could not withstand wives who openly challenged him, especially when his authority rested on rules so transparently hypocritical. And so he doubled down, tightening the leash on those who complied and cutting loose those who did not. What unfolded was not a debate about safety but a purge, a reorganization of the family around the axis of Cody and Robin. COVID was the justification, but the real agenda was control. This is where the TLC narrative becomes its own form of dishonesty. Viewers were told a neat story. The pandemic created distance, communication broke down, relationships dissolved, but behind the cameras, another story played out. Cody's mistreatment of Christine's children, documented in Christine's own words, was swept aside, rewritten as if it had never happened. Instead, the new season dangled an insulting storyline: Christine's husband David possibly bonding with Cody, as though reconciliation could be scripted for ratings. The entire premise was absurd. No sane woman would hand her new partner to the man who traumatized her children. Yet there it was, packaged for public consumption, proof that authenticity had long since been abandoned. The show had become what the family itself always was, a performance. In the early years, TLC sold viewers a messy but relatable picture of plural marriage, faith, struggle, and unconventional family bonds. By the time COVID hit, the mask had slipped. What remained was a hollow spectacle, propped up by manufactured drama and desperate paychecks. Religion, unity, even love had all been replaced by money. The Browns weren't fighting over faith. They were negotiating contracts. They weren't struggling with family. They were weaponizing it for airtime. COVID simply gave them the chance to reframe old wounds into new episodes. The most revealing part of this era is not Christine's exit or Janelle's frustration. It is the way Cody and Robin interpreted Christine's departure. To the world, she was a woman finally breaking free, a mother protecting her children, a wife reclaiming her dignity. To Cody and Robin, she was a traitor, and that distinction is everything. In their worldview, the family does not exist as a collective. It exists as Cody. To leave Cody is to leave the family. To criticize Cody is to attack the family. This twisted logic reframed Christine's independence not as survival, but as treason. And treason demands punishment. The punishments came swiftly and cruelly. Christine was branded disloyal, her assets scrutinized, her choices questioned, her reputation attacked. Cody railed about betrayal, Robin cried over family unity, and together they sought to make an example of her. They attempted to shun her, to deny her resources, to force her into a pilgrimage of apology and submission, but Christine refused. In doing so, she exposed the raw truth. In the Brown family, loyalty is not love, it is currency. Stay, and you are rewarded. Leave, and you are destroyed. This system of loyalty as currency explains everything, from Robin's manipulation of COVID rules to the way Mykelti was once paraded as proof of her benevolence, then discarded when she criticized. It explains why Cody so easily abandoned the children who challenged him while doting on those who complied. It explains why Robin remains tethered to Cody, even as he grows angrier and more unstable. In their empire, loyalty is the only thing that matters, and like any corrupt currency, it inflates until it becomes worthless. The timeline is damning. COVID arrives. Robin retreats into hypochondria. Cody seizes authority. Rules multiply. Hypocrisy grows. Resentment festers. Christine resists. Janelle questions. Mary drifts. The family fractures, not because of the virus, but because the virus gave Cody and Robin the perfect excuse to do what they always wanted: consolidate power and silence dissent. TLC spins it into a marketable storyline, carefully trimming away the ugliest truths. Christine leaves, and instead of respect, she is branded a traitor. The cycle repeats: loyalty weaponized, dissent crushed, reality rewritten. And yet, the cracks cannot be hidden forever. Viewers see the contradictions, children speak the truths their parents will not, and the facade of unity erodes with each episode. The Brown family's implosion is not a tragedy of disease. It is the inevitable collapse of a system built on control, favoritism, and manipulation, finally exposed by a crisis too big to hide behind. And as the story moves forward, one thing becomes clear: COVID was never the villain. The real villains are the ones who used it, twisted it, and weaponized it to tighten their grip on a family already breaking apart. The virus may fade, but the scars it revealed will never heal. Thanks for watching.